My name is Kevin Berger, and I am the author of Atheism is Untenable. On this channel, I don't engage in apologetics. Instead, I apply the principles of polemics and skepticism to atheism and the claims made by atheists. This is Justified Nonetheless. Please like, share, subscribe, and turn on those notifications.
And in the past, I used a courtroom analogy to talk about this because I like it. The defendant in a trial is, as a matter of fact, either guilty or innocent. They either committed the crime for which they're accused or they didn't. But we don't address both claims simultaneously. We only address the claim of guilt. We have a phrase, innocent until proven guilty. But that phrase does not mean that we are claiming that the defendant, as a matter of fact, is innocent until such time as guilt is demonstrated. It's a claim that we are going to presume innocence, or we are going to act as if they are innocent. We are going to behave as if they are innocent until such time as guilt is established. It's a way of establishing where the burden of proof is. And juries don't vote on a question of innocence. They vote on an accusation of guilt. And it's either guilty or not guilty. And if a juror says not guilty, that doesn't mean that they're convinced that the defendant is innocent. And so,
before watching this video, you may want to watch my deep dive on the Gumball Analogy, because in that video I lay the groundwork for differentiating between epistemology, the study of knowledge, and doxastics, the study of belief. For our purposes here, I will just say that the key point to remember is that while justification is a required component for knowledge, it isn't for the presence of belief. As we all know, people believe all sorts of things that are totally unjustified. And this means, in the terms of doxastics, belief is an ought rather than an is. That is to say, we ought not believe things without evidence or good reason, but we cannot derive from that ought the is of apisticism or non-belief. Because unlike consciously and willfully acknowledging that one does not know whether a proposition is true, belief is involuntary and can be held without conscious awareness. Now, in the video deconstructing the Gumball analogy, I noted 14 different problems, and they all apply here as well. Number one, the analogy misrepresents what belief is. Belief is a propositional attitude in which the subject finds the proposition more likely to be true than untrue, period. Two, the analogy conflates belief and knowledge as if the same stringent criteria apply to belief as to knowledge. Three, the analogy implies that a high degree of credence is required for belief. In the case of the courtroom analogy, this is worse because it suggests that the threshold for what constitutes belief is similar to the beyond a reasonable doubt standard of a criminal trial, when the actual threshold is just more likely, which is more analogous to the preponderance of evidence standard of a civil trial. Four, the analogy fails to differentiate between suspension of judgment with suspension of belief, leading to a false equivalence. Just because the jury renders a not guilty verdict does not imply that the jurors don't consider it more likely to be true than untrue that the accused is guilty. Again, these are distinct standards. Number five, the analogy assumes that one can suspend belief or simply choose not to believe in the absence of evidence, which is in tension with doxastic involuntarism. Number six, the analogy falsely presumes that justification is a prerequisite for belief, which is in tension with doxastic involuntarism. Number seven, the analogy falsely presumes that belief operates with the same model as propositional logic, evaluating a single proposition at a time, when in actuality it is the result of System 1 cognition and Bayesian probability, processing multiple propositions simultaneously and integrating them in complex ways. In the case of the courtroom analogy, it's worse than with the Gumball analogy because whereas the latter at least considers both the hypothetical evenness or oddness of a number of gumballs, albeit individually, the courtroom analogy only considers one of the propositions, period. It ignores the alternative altogether. Now, this is perfectly fine if the analogy is being used strictly to demonstrate which party has the burden of proof, the claimant. However, Once again, making assertions, the burden of proof, evidence, and arguments, all that falls within the realm of epistemology, not doxastics. Even when discussing epistemology, it's worth noting that, contrary to popular opinion, the argument that the burden of proof is on the one making the positive claims is wrong. Anyone making any claim incurs a burden of proof. There are no special rules for negative claims. What can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, and yes, that includes negative claims. For one thing, the idea that you can't prove a negative is self-defeating. Secondly, it's simply wrong. For example, if it is self-contradictory, like a married bachelor, that can be disproven. Or if it is intrinsically incoherent, like a square circle, that can be disproven. I mean, I don't think any sensible person is going to argue that if I claim I have a living adult elephant in my pocket, that claim can be disproven. More importantly, I would say that if you cannot show how you know that something is true, then you cannot demonstrate that you know it is true either. But I digress. This isn't about knowledge. It's supposed to be about belief. And there are other reasons why it's not good enough to just say, you've not met the burden of proof. And one is obliged to address both the claim being made as well as its negation. If your desire truly is to believe as many true things and not believe as many untrue things as possible, ignoring the negation doesn't advance your stated goal. Secondly, if belief is understood to be justified true belief, then skepticism is an incomplete and inadequate epistemology because it only casts doubts on claims. Thirdly, if one ascribes to the idea that belief should be proportioned to the evidence and that it is morally wrong to believe without sufficient evidence, this implies that there's an intellectual imperative to actively seek truth and facts and knowledge. Number 8, the analogy inaccurately portrays belief as purely conscious logical process. The majority of belief formation occurs subconsciously without deliberate conscious reasoning. Number 9, the analogy falsely presumes that only evidence, sound reasoning, and philosophical arguments are factors in the formation of belief. However, we all know that there are a variety of factors, including but not limited to beliefs, biases, other cognitive functions, cultural influences, emotions, pre-existing beliefs, personal experiences, and social pressures. The analogy falsely presumes that belief can't be formed by any of those, which is wrong. Number 10, the analogy neglects to consider that the fact that subconscious beliefs significantly impact our cognitive processes. Number 11, the analogy fails to demonstrate an actual absence of belief, instead assuming it. This presumption leads to circular reasoning, where the analogy begs the question it aims to answer. Number 12, the analogy becomes a caricature of the complexity and nuance involved in belief formation by oversimplifying human cognition to fit into a neat logical framework. Human cognition and belief systems are far more intricate than the analogy suggests. Number 13, the analogy doesn't even address the potential for the presence of subconscious beliefs in the proposition in question, or its negation, at all. Just because the jury renders a not guilty verdict doesn't imply that they do not believe that the accused is innocent or guilty. Again, it's a difference in the standard of credence. Number 14, the analogy doesn't address actions rising from belief. Belief informs action, and an absence of belief provides no impetus for action. So if, in this hypothetical, the jurors render either verdict, they must find one more likely than the other. Whether the degree of credence reaches the threshold of a guilty verdict is another question, because it's a different threshold. In summary, when one says, "I don't know," while this is an honest and logical response, it is an expression of the epistemological position of agnosticism. Similarly, when one says, "I'm uncertain, unconvinced, undecided, unsure," these statements all refer to justification, which again falls within the purview of epistemology, not doxastics. None of this deals with the presence of belief, therefore none of it does anything in terms of the hypothetical doxastic position of apisticism. Because the courtroom analogy hinges on the question of justification for rendering a guilty or not guilty verdict, it doesn't speak to the hypothetical doxastic position of apisticism at all, and deals strictly with the epistemological position, which is a category error. Until next time, remember, even if your beliefs aren't necessarily true, they may just be justified nonetheless.